Wednesday, May the 19th, the year of our Lord 2021. Coming at you from Capitol Hill. Oh, I just remembered something. I am all over the place today. And, you know, I came down here, wanted to get this podcast going. Super excited about it. Of course, I'm late, as always. And apologies to our guest for me being so, even if it's just a minute late, I'm annoyed at myself when I'm a minute late to these things. And the reason I was a minute late is because I'm going to Arizona tomorrow. And if, by the way, if any of you are out there in Arizona or nearabouts, I will be doing some reporting from the Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene rally in Mesa. If you haven't booked your tickets yet, I think they're still available at, I forget now, AmericaFirstRallyTour.com, I think it is, AmericaFirstRallyTour.com. So the reason I'm late is I'm on the phone, I'm trying to sort out my travel details, I'm trying to throw everything in the, in the washing machine. I almost said dishwasher. I'm throwing all my clothes in the dishwasher, right? And I'm trying to get everything ready. And then I remember, I've got to take some podcasting equipment. I got to take, all of the doohickeys you have to have and the adapters and all of that nowadays. Because, of course, nothing ever works anymore, right? Nothing just simply works. You got to have an adapter for this. And, we're streamlining MacBooks now. So we've got little, things that you need to plug. It's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. And I'm a pretty travel competent person. I've traveled most of my life. As a child, I was good at it. As a teenager, I was good at it. As a young man, I was good at it. But it appears that talent is now dropping off as I stop becoming a young man. Now, you ever seen that movie? I think is it Up in the Air with George Clooney and Anna Kendrick? And that used to be me, right? I used to be George Clooney, and yeah, he has everything is flat packed in the suitcase. Everything fits. Just carry on. Gets on, gets off. No trouble. Knows exactly what to do at all junctions of travel. Knows all the different airports, how they all work. I used to be that guy. I used to get so annoyed at the person in front of me who was 15 years older than me, and he'd take an extra 20 seconds to get his laptop out of his laptop bag to put it on the thing. I'm thinking to myself, you have to do this. Why can't this be done already? And now I am that guy. So I'm sorry to everybody who I tutted at over the last 10 years for not being quick enough on the trail. And of course, the pièce de résistance of my flummoxing this afternoon is I left my coffee upstairs. So there you go. But to cheer me up, to perk us all up, to bring likeness and goodness and great news into our day is none other than our guest this afternoon, and that is none other than the newly announced gubernatorial candidate for New York. That is Andrew Giuliani. Andrew, welcome back to the program. Do we have Andrew? Oh, no, I don't have him. I wonder what's going on there. I'll dial him back in. See, now, look, how I talked about the pièce de résistance being the coffee being left upstairs. No, the pièce de résistance was me having called up Andrew.
Sorry, Raheem, I'm right here. Sorry about that, my friend. Sometimes when you're in the canyons in New York over here, the cell phone service cuts out on you, so I apologize.
Oh, no.
But I got to tell you, you said something that truly resonated with me in the opening. That dishwasher, I think I use it for a washing machine also, so I know exactly what you're saying.
I am. Do you mind me asking, Andrew, how old are you?
I am 35 years old. I've been in politics for 32 years. I feel like I'm a gray beard over here. It's interesting. One of the things that came up yesterday that I thought about was when I'm elected governor of New York on November 8th, 2022, I will be the youngest governor in the history of New York, surpassing by a few months a gentleman by the name of Theodore Roosevelt.
Wow. Well,
Good company.
It's
Good company.
Good company indeed. Well, look, okay, so you're probably just a couple of months older than me. If you're 35, I'm 34, about to turn 35, and I'm starting to dodder around a little bit here. You know, I'm walking into a room, I'm forgetting why I'm walking into that room. I'm signing the wrong parts of forms and contracts, and people are looking at me like I'm a moron. You, on the other hand, appear to go from strength to strength, and that is evidenced through your career, your life, especially your life in the last 5 years or so. Where I think I know it must be hard, being Rudy Giuliani's son sometimes, and there's that whole living in the shadow kind of whatever. I mean, look, I also understand that it must also be incredible fun being Rudy Giuliani's son sometimes. Yeah. But sometimes you can just get branded as that, right? But I like to think of you as that you really have carved out your own thing for yourself, especially in the last couple of years. And so I want to ask you about that, because New York is one of the largest economies in the world. And people might be looking at you and saying, what has he ever done? What makes him qualified? Just because his name's Giuliani doesn't mean he gets to just go and swan around New York and do whatever he wants, which, by the way, I think it should mean that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. So let's get this. You've made this announcement. You're going to run. That's a big deal. What makes you qualified?
So let's just take what's happened over the last 15 months in my work in the Trump administration here. A couple of major programs that I was blessed to play a role in. Paycheck Protection Program, which ultimately ended up saving the jobs of tens of millions of Americans while everything was shutting down. That was a program that was put together in 6 days. And I think what Americans should know, if they don't know this already, was that this was not done by government bureaucrats who have been in Washington, D.C. for 30 years. This was done by the private sector. President Trump and Secretary Mnuchin wanted to make sure that our business CEOs led the way on that. I was one of the team that ultimately dealt with those business CEOs, that helped to craft that policy, that helped to make sure that we saved those millions and millions of American jobs. Secondly, the CARES Act, the MTA CARES Act, we ended up working through the funding that saved tens of thousands of jobs for New Yorkers on our MTA and our transit system, which, by the way, that's certainly a program that I'd be working on from Albany starting in 2023, because there's a lot more that needs to be fixed in there. Third, the 9/11 Health Fund. It was delinquent $3.9 million. Medicaid from New York was delinquent $3.5 million. We were able in September of last year to make sure that money was completely reimbursed. And if you've ever had to work with two government agencies, the Department of Treasury and Medicare and Medicaid, you'll know it's not exactly the easiest thing, just to make sure that money got reimbursed. And we made sure that they had separate tax identification numbers, which, by the way, was fault of the New York State Department of Finance. Another reason why you don't want government bureaucrats, and smaller government is better. So the truth is, look, I think over the last 5 years, but certainly over the last 32 years, from a campaigning perspective, from seeing City Hall, seeing truly a transformative City Hall, and what I would say is the greatest City Hall in city government history. I've learned a whole lot, and the truth is, I will be building a team around me that will be focused on private-public partnerships, and I put private first because it is a capital private and a lowercase public.
So, that's a pretty robust answer. It's people will come at you and accuse you of inexperience. People will come. They'll be doing it, frankly, for the next 20 years. And then after that, they'll accuse you of being too old. So, that's the way it goes. How do you message to New Yorkers that you are a man with a plan? What is the kind of the top 2, 3, 5 things that you will be telling them that you will be working on for them in their favor in that state?
Yeah, so look, and I think these are issues that affect all New Yorkers, whether you're red or whether you're blue, it doesn't matter. The 19.5 million people that still live in New York, I say still live because that number's gone down significantly over the last 14 months and certainly over the last 10 years. We're focusing on 3 major issues. One, economic development. We are going to light the furnace of New York economic development once again by deregulating and by cutting taxes. Our focus is going to be on creating jobs, jobs, and jobs in New York, not in Governor DeSantis' home state of Florida. Secondly, we're going to make sure that any American, any New York parent that wants to say over their children's education, whether or not they have the resources or do not have the resources, that they do have that say. Andrew Cuomo came into office saying that he was going to be a charter school advocate. Well, let me tell you, this last $212 billion budget, I think it shows you exactly what he thought about the charter schools. That cap that was 460 charter schools statewide, it remained while the teachers union got a 15% raise in budget. Absolutely absurd. And any community in New York that wants a charter school, I will work to cut that red tape to make sure that they get a charter school. Third, and most importantly, we need to make sure that we start policies that set record-setting crime reduction in New York. That's funny because I've heard that from some guy like 30 years ago who was campaigning in New York as well. I think his name was Giuliani. I don't know. But anyway.
And he did it.
The truth is, he did it. He did it. He absolutely did it. He took New York City down from 2,200 murders to under 600. That continued until we've had the lack of leadership from the current administration. We've seen crime spike. We need to protect police officers' qualified immunity. We need to make sure we repeal the disastrous policy of bail reform, which happened in Albany last year and has just led to a violent crime spike. And we need to make sure the war on police stops. There will be no greater friend to our New York police than Governor Giuliani from Albany.
Ladies and gentlemen, our guest is Andrew Giuliani. Just announced a gubernatorial run in New York State. And Andrew, I hope you don't mind me calling you Andrew.
Please, come on.
The National Pulse has a membership program. They're the reason I exist, basically. We don't take any corporate money. We don't have any foundations or anything like that. What we do is we say to people, if you like our work, give us $5 or $10, and enough kind people or the left would argue stupid people chip in every month to keep us
smartest
going.
People, the smartest people that believe in democracy. That's the people that are doing that.
Well,
so that's how I feel about them.
Yeah, well, thank you. And it is kind of that disintermediation of how media works. And this is, we exist for the people. Our reporting is for ordinary people. And so I always like to bring them into the equation as well when I'm doing the podcast, they're part of my everyday life now. And I think that's probably, I get on their nerves now. I'm always in the chat that we have a big private chat channel. I'm always in there bugging them to help me with things, and they chip in with research and all of this sort of stuff. And one of them lives in central New York State. Her name is Reese, and she's asked me to ask you this question. So this is from Reese, and Reese asks, everyone runs for governor of New York City, not the whole state. What will you do to come and connect with people above Albany to bridge the gap between us and the city and make us a part of the state again?
Great question, Reese. So let me start off first off by saying I think Reese is probably right. I think a lot of people do run a New York City centric campaign. Here's what I've done already to start working on that. We will make sure we will work to bring clean fracking to New York State that affects the southern tier of New York, southern tier of western New York so much. Just people can go on Zillow and look at the property values in Pennsylvania and then right over the border in New York. And you'll see exactly what that actually means from an economic standpoint. Secondly, I am building a team, an economic team, and these are people that I worked with from the White House, people that I worked with before the White House, of business leaders from all across New York State, not just Wall Street in New York, but truly all across New York State, Buffalo, Rochester, Utica, Rome, all the way across New York State, to make sure that I am being advised by everybody. Any business owner that has a say will have a seat in a Giuliani administration. When we change around New York, Raheem, it's going to be because the business leaders, the job creators, the parents want their kids to have a better life because they have a say in it. That's how we're going to change around New York. It's not going to come only from Wall Street. It's going to come from the north down. And so I truly believe that.
Well, and I suppose this I'm a Londoner, as many people know, and I grew up in a city that has that same dynamic. A lot of London mayors have only really aimed at certain parts of the city in which they campaign. And London is absolutely massive. It's massive. It would be a state, right, in and of itself.
Yeah.
And suburban Londoners were often upset about being, their votes just kind of taken for granted. The guys in the leafy suburbs vote for the Conservative candidate. And the guys in the tower blocks and the council houses vote for the Labour candidate. And that's how it always was. And that brings me on to another question here, because New York City is one thing. New York State is a whole other thing. I mean, New York State is one of the most influential nations in the world in and of itself, right? And so by its very nature, that job is kind of geopolitical as well. You are dealing with foreign investment. You are dealing with matters of national security. You are dealing with all those sorts of other things. Give us an idea in terms of your ideas of selling New York as a state to the rest of the world. How do you couch it?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. And when I think about New York State, here's what I think about. I think about the Erie Canal. I think about the vision 200 years ago it took to build the Erie Canal. And what that ended up doing, Raheem, was that connected the rest of the world to the rest of the United States from an economic standpoint through New York. The fact that they would be able to dig that and do that created commerce, not just around our state, but all around our country and truly all around the world. So New York truly has a great history of that. I know for us on this side of the pond, as I know that you've certainly experienced over the last bunch of years, we always think that history is 200 years. As President Trump told me, as when he international tour, he realized, something that's 200 years old for them happened yesterday, basically. But the truth is, New York has always been an economic center in the world. That has changed over the last few years, and it is moving out of New York. Our economics are moving out of New York. Our jobs are fleeing the state because we are disincentivizing businesses from creating here. Governor Giuliani will make sure we incentivize New York businesses to continue to build and other businesses to look at New York and say, this place is competitive. This is New York. There's a great history here. There's great leadership. I want to create jobs for New Yorkers, and I believe that this is a place that we should set our footprint.
Andrew Giuliani, I've just got a couple more questions for you. Just two quick questions for you. I'm really appreciative for your time. The first one relates to the agony that we've all been living through the last 18 months. And I think as we proceed down the lines of investigation on this, we are becoming more and more convinced that this didn't come from a wet market. It didn't come from, a badly made bat soup or whatever it was. And much of the, quote unquote scientific community is now out there saying, you know what? Let's have another look at this. You can read that from Nicholas Wade in the the former New York Times science correspondent, and you see it all over the place now. And people like Josh Rogan, who by the way has politics nowhere near yours or mine, over at the Washington Post is now pushing at this door and really trying to show what happened here. We on the National Pulse, we broke last week a story that the Wuhan lab, the Virology Institute, had scrubbed from its own website all references to its active partnerships with the National Institutes for Health, with NIAID, with all these different organizations. But the one they left up there was a New York-based organization, and that organization is called the EcoHealth Alliance. And the EcoHealth Alliance is run by a chap called Peter Daszak. And Peter Daszak was the supposedly independent World Health Organization auditor who went over to Wuhan a couple of months ago and said to them, guys, did this outbreak come from you? And they went, oh, no, sir. And he said, well, there you have it. Can I ask you now, if you are elected governor of the great state of New York, will you please investigate the EcoHealth Alliance?
Well, what I can tell you, Raheem, is I think it is absolutely criminal, the fact that they would politicize this the way that they have. The truth is, the Democratic Party and the media, or the leftists in the media, have politicized this. I would certainly look into that in day one. I do not want to commit to anything from a legal perspective, because I do think any good governor should take the time to actually deal with his council and make sure that they do the right thing. But what I can tell you is I know that our biggest threat as Americans, the biggest threat to democracy around the world right now is China. It's China. It's China. And anybody who does not want to admit that or calls that in some way bigoted or anything like that, they are just not looking at it. I can tell you from the White House and the time that I spent in there that China's motives are to do everything they can to weaken the United States significantly and make sure that China is truly the leader of, and I don't want to say a free world anymore, the leader of the world if that ends up happening. All Americans, whether you believe in Donald Trump, whether you believe in Joe Biden, I mean, you got to admit that China is truly our biggest threat right here. I guess if you believe in Joe Biden, you probably wouldn't. I mean, one of the things I used to say in the White House was, I'm happy to take 5 figures a year serving the American people while Hunter Biden takes 6 figures a day serving the Chinese people.
So let me just clarify on that as well, because I think that should give us great encouragement. I mean, no, we're not talking from a legal perspective. Certainly not talking from a listen. If there's one person that knows, that political prosecutions are wrong, it's you. Okay, I mean, your family is living through one right now. That's not what I'm asking. What I'm asking is for an investigation into the, just inquiring into the organization and who it's been working with. That's all we're asking.
Yes. I would absolutely commit to that to you today, 100%. And you will get somebody who will be tough to make sure that we do not continue to see, as I said, the politicization, the corruption, like we've seen in the Justice Department, right? I mean, it's the same thing in the health communities to actually politicize this. It's terrible, and it hurts Americans so badly that we do need to have our government leaders stand up and say, look, our main role as government leaders should be to protect our citizens. It should be to take more control or take more power, which unfortunately many leaders, including Andrew Cuomo, have done over the last 10 and a half years and certainly the last 14 months. It should be to protect our citizens, to protect and serve them.
Just something just occurred to me there as well. All right, I said one more. What I'll do is I'll do 3 in one question. Okay, just 3 little quick ones. Okay, number 1, election integrity. How high of a priority is that for you?
Right next to China. You think about it. I will not spend a dime of my discretionary income, which is probably not too much because I'm not taking any salary running. But I will not spend a dime of my discretionary income on Major League Baseball this year because they will not stand for election integrity. It absolutely is the most important thing. It's something that our team is already looking into in 2022 in New York to make sure that there is an election that anybody who wants to vote can vote, but that nobody can vote twice. I think that's extremely important. So that is right up on the top of my priority list.
Number 2, the question that a lot of people will ask is, can you really win?
Yes, we can win. Absolutely. We've already looked at the numbers on this. The truth is, if you can carry 37% of New York City, because of the populace of New York City, you have a chance to win. In our polling numbers right now, we see we are carrying 42 to 43% of New York City. In doing that, you can absolutely drive the vote in the other areas of New York State and win the state. We actually are polling significantly better than the other potential or announced Republican candidates. And right now we are polling very, very close with Governor Cuomo. I believe the person who's going to help us most in these pollings is Andrew Cuomo, because the more times that Cuomo speaks, the better it ends up helping us. So yes, we can, and Raheem, we will win.
And lastly, Andrew Giuliani, just before, and by the way, I want you to make sure you plug your website and your social media feeds and everything, and make sure people keep up to date with you. But I would be remiss if I didn't ask, and I get slapped on the wrist by all of my members, which are thousands and thousands of people, so my wrist would be very red raw if I didn't ask the question, how is your father? What is going on there? I appreciate that maybe not much you can tell us, but people obviously love him and are concerned.
He is tough. I got to tell you, there's nobody tougher than Rudolph Giuliani, and I am so proud to be his son. Since we talked last, Raheem, I think a couple of different things that happened. We might have talked actually after NBC and the Washington Post and New York Times had to retract their story. Mm-hmm. But we also found out recently, and this is pretty coincidental, and I'm certainly interested to hear your take on this, is on May 1st, 2018, the Justice Department started investigating my father. You know the coincidence of the date, Raheem? That was the day that he started to represent President Donald J. Trump.
Wow.
Now, you tell me the Justice Department has not become corrupted. It is disgusting. And any free American, any free citizen in the world who believes truly that justice should be blind, is disgusted by what they're seeing right now. Rudy Giuliani is the greatest prosecutor in the history of our country. He's the mayor in the history of our city and the greatest mayor in the history of our state. He is one of the greatest Americans in the history of our country, and I stand by my father every step of the way.
Well, Andrew Giuliani, you know, we can hear that. We can hear that passion. We can hear that fire in your voice that we've been, you know, so lucky to have heard from Mayor Giuliani, from your father for decades and decades now. And I remember, you know, I can't even begin to imagine what it was like for your family. But I remember watching from 3,000 miles away, Mayor Giuliani on television, you know, immediately after 9/11 and thinking, wow, what a guy. And what a guy to take up the mantle for your home state. You know, that's you, Andrew Giuliani. Tell people where they can follow you, where they can get involved with the campaign.
Yes. Well, look, any of those great National Pulse listeners who have spent a few bucks to do this, please come to nyforgiuliani.com. That's nyforgiuliani.com and donate a few bucks. I suggest 22 or 57. 22 to make sure that Andrew Giuliani wins in 2022 and becomes the 57th governor of the great state of New York. So please come over there. Whether you're a New Yorker, whether you've been to New York, whether you want to go to New York, whether you just like New York in the movies, please do everything you can, because this is going to take an all of New York and all of America effort in order to do this. So nyforgiuliani.com, and then our social media handles are at Andrew H. Giuliani. Please follow me there, and you'll see where we're going, because we're going all around the state, all 62 counties over the next 18 months. And I'll tell you what, it's going to end right in Albany, and that's when one-party rule ends in Albany. And Raheem, I got to tell you, I want you to book a hotel right now, December 31st, 2022, because on January 1st, 2023, we're going to throw a heck of a party, and we're going to get right down to work.
I'm booking the closest hotel to the governor's mansion. Believe me. Andrew, thank you so much for being with us here again today. Godspeed. We'll keep up with you throughout the campaign. Godspeed. Anything you need, let us know.
Thank you, Raheem. I'll talk to you later, my friend, and keep up the great work. You truly are a great man.
Thank you, Andrew Giuliani. It means a lot coming from you. Thank you. You too. And be safe. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, I got to tell you, you can hear that fire. You can hear that passion. You can hear that it means just so much to him. And that's what I care about, you know. Policies, obviously, you know, that I know we spend a lot of time bickering over, you know, candidates with different policies. I mean, look at the whole debacle recently between, you know, Chip Roy and Elise Stefanik. Give me a break. I mean, you know, talk about the worst of the Hobson's choice. You know, this is something that should be a given, right? Policies, come on. Donald Trump showed the way. Policies, show me America first. Then let's talk about passion. Let's talk about integrity. Let's talk about prioritization. You know, China and electoral integrity, right up there for Andrew Giuliani. And I just, you know, that is music to my ears, because any candidate that ranks either of those two things second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, or doesn't appear in their list of priorities at all has no business in 21st century Western politics. Those two things are everything. And, you know, we have to take a lot of blame for the fact that we've allowed it to get this far. And on both sides of that, with both of those issues. that we didn't see this great big steal coming up. It was so abundantly obvious. So abundantly obvious. I mean, we ran story after story after story on the Transition Integrity Project, on mail-in ballots, on everything. Everything. All right, not everything. The one thing that we didn't get was the machine stuff. And I don't, frankly, I don't even know if there's anything in the machine stuff. I am not qualified to tell you if there's anything in the machine stuff. And I never will be. But you don't even need the machines to flip the election, to flip the results. You need to show what every, good-hearted, sound-minded person knows, which is that states broke the law in changing their election laws. Or they didn't change the election laws. What they did was they ignored their election laws. They broke the law in doing that. And the other part of this is, of course, it's an industrial scale operation that we're dealing with here inside the Democratic Party, and of course with the establishment media as well. It's an industrial scale operation, a fraud operation, right? You think of all the different things, all the different constituent parts of your life, and right now, the left is engaged in defrauding you in some way. The left has always been engaged in defrauding you out of your taxes. They love that. But I want to bring a couple of stories to your attention here, and I've got to tell you, as days go on, the National Pulse needs me less and less. In terms of the amount of content that is sent my way now by other people, members of the what I now like to call the National Pulse Artist Collective, right? NPAC, which you can join up to at fundrealnews.com. If you haven't done it, it's one of the coolest communities you'll ever be a part of. It just really is. NPAC. Seriously. And we call it the Artist Collective. It's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I've noticed that there's just a lot of creative people in there, and they always want to help. They want to help with, some are doing statistics and analysis, some are doing graphics, some are doing, some spreadsheets for us, some are doing, music. I told you this, we played this song by Stephen Dale Petit a couple of weeks back on the podcast. If you missed it, you missed it. But maybe I'll play us out with that again today. But these are amazing people, and day in and day out they're sending me stuff. I realize I'm waffling on. It's because I'm mid Google. I shouldn't say Google. Mid search on something at the same time on my device. I'm trying to bring a couple of stories up that I want to talk to you about. Back to that fraud point I'm making. Let's start with how, whether it's Nigel Farage rallies or Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene rallies, between the Lincoln Project and, verified quote-unquote reporters on Twitter, people who work at the Irish Times newspaper and Byline Times, this Blue Anon conspiracy left-wing site. A bunch of these people have been encouraging, Blue Anon members, which are far left conspiracy theorists. The types of people who think Russia stole the last election, but doesn't think the 2016 election, I should say, but doesn't think that this past election could have been stolen by people in America. That's Blue Anon, okay? And these people are flooding MTG, Matt Gaetz, Nigel Farage, Eventbrite links for the rallies with fake registrations. And their idea is that you force the event organizers to go, oh my goodness, we've got 40,000 people coming to this rally in Tulsa. We better book a room that can accommodate that. And then, of course, there's 200 people in the room and everybody looks really silly. That happened to the president of the United States. That's why Brad Parscale had to move on from his role in the campaign. So they're doing it. They're doing it again. Difference is now we know how to account for it. We know what it looks like. We know how to take false registrations out of RSVPs like that. And I've seen it all before. I've worked in that business. So, 2 days ago, I noticed that this is happening with Nigel Farage's event in Pittsburgh. And I get in touch with him and I tell him, hey, I've seen this social media activity. You're about to start getting a lot of fake registrations for your event. And here's where the National Pulse Artist Collective kicked in. So the members of the Discord chat channel that we have, they decided to go to work in identifying who was tweeting these links as fraud, and went through, identified who the people were, how many tickets they had tried to book, what messages they had left. In some cases, where they worked, i.e., these quote-unquote reporters, these verified Twitter accounts. Hey, actually, you guys claim to be reporters, but here you are trying to defraud a political event. And one of the guys works for UpGuard. It's a cybersecurity firm. What is his name? Let me find out here. Scroll down this thing. Chris Vickery. And there's a very special reason that I'm naming Chris Vickery as well, because I said to Chris Vickery, hey, you work at a cybersecurity firm called UpGuard. And you're engaged in a cyber fraud, effectively, a scam. And Chris Vickery immediately blocks me and then starts tweeting about me and says, oh, I will sue you if you don't take that allegation down. Vickery, my dude, you are trying to defraud people. You are trying to get a group to spend more money on a venue. You are trying to stop other people getting their hands on tickets. You are trying to leave empty spaces in a room. You are defrauding people, and you are doing it on the internet. That is the definition of the job that you claim to stop other people doing. You, sir, are not just trying to defraud people. You are a fraud. Sue me. Another of these people is somebody who writes at Politico. Politico's, we're independent journalists. We wouldn't be politicking. Andrew Scott, who writes for Politico, also engaged in this. Peter Maguire from the Irish Times. A government healthcare lobbyist, Julia Grace. Peter Jukes, Russia hoax aficionado. And that, I tell you, the National Pulse Artists Collective, they went to work, they went to town. They helped them scrub all these fake registrations from the Freedom Works thing. They set up a thing called Farage Event Scammer Tracking Sheet. And it's so cool to watch how in real time, ordinary people are just like, no, you're not going to F with us. We're done with that. That world is over. Another of the things I wanted to bring to your attention. So we have a contributor, part of the Artist Collective, of course, a contributor called Jim Nellis. And Jim just did such a good job. He reached out to me 10 days ago. He said, "Look, I work in supply chains and all of that. I want to do something for you guys on inflation." And the article was so good. It was so tight. It was so well written. I barely had to do any edits to it. This is why I say that National Pulse, decreasingly needs me in its life. All right, I have to do the editing and the publishing and the pictures, fine. But the content, that's all. We're crowdsourcing that now. Well, some of it. Natalie won't like me saying that. We're crowdsourcing like 25% of it. But still, that's a cool thing to have happen, right? When the quality is so high. And I encourage you all to go out and look for this article. It's called Graphics, Biden's America Last Ideas Crush the Working Class in Just 100 Days. And Jim Nellis did such a good job of putting all the information together that I actually reached out to our graphics girl, Anne, and I said, Anne, you've got to put this stuff in these like infographics. And then she did such a good job as well. So there is like this article that's up on the National Pulse, which, isn't, we're not CNBC. We're not The Economist. We don't have those resources. But we have one of the best articles out there right now on inflation, and it's done. It's produced in a way that allows ordinary people to understand. Because I don't understand how half this stuff works, but this article is done in such a way that it allows the ordinary person to understand what's going on here, and it puts it into graphics so you can really see, like, hey, oh my goodness, meat prices are up 6%. Oh my goodness, egg prices are up 5%. Fruit and veg up 3.8%. Dairy up 1.6%. It's got all of the images, the infographics, the lumber prices up 124%. I just love it when a plan comes together. It looks so cool. And of course, the last story I wanted to talk to you about today is, so it's this Matt Gaetz story again, and I'm obsessed with it now. So last week, you probably saw in the news and, breaking, flash briefing, Joel Greenberg set to plead. And then the next day, we are one day closer to Joel Greenberg pleading. And then, of course, we have to wait until Monday, and you get all of the Sunday chat shows, the Sunday shows talk, Joel Greenberg is 24 hours away from pleading. And of course, then, we all, knew what was going to happen here. Anybody that's been following the case knows what's going to happen, except what the media refuses to tell you about Joel Greenberg and this case. Now, remember, Greenberg was this guy that they keep calling, Gaetz' former wingman. Okay, whatever. So this guy has pleaded to a number of crimes this week. And you can read the plea deal. It's up on the site. I feel like everybody has to go through this information because I was going through it. And I'm 60 pages out of 80 pages into this thing, which is weird in and of itself, by the way. And I get to count 24. Count 24. And you read through this, and maybe I'll just read it to you. The victim of Count 24 is a teacher at a local school in the Middle District of Florida, referred to herein as the teacher. On or about October 4th, 2019, the teacher filed with the Seminole County Supervisor of Elections to run for the elected office of Seminole County Tax Collector in the 2020 election. Because the teacher had filed to run in opposition to him, Greenberg used the mail, an interactive computer service, an electronic communication service, an electronic communication system of interstate commerce, and a facility of interstate commerce to engage in a course of conduct that caused, attempted to cause, and would be reasonably expected to cause substantial emotional distress to the teacher. Greenberg started by mailing letters. On or about October 10th, 2019, Greenberg used the United States Mail to send an anonymous letter that purported to be from a concerned student. The letter was mailed from the Middle District of Florida and was addressed to the head of the school where the teacher worked. The envelope contained an anonymous typed letter addressed to the head of the school that contained information alleging an inappropriate relationship between a teacher and a student. In that letter, Greenberg, posing as a student at the school, falsely represented that he had first-hand knowledge of a sexual relationship between another fictitious student, identified as R, and the teacher. Greenberg, posing as a student at the school, falsely represented that R admitted to engaging in oral and anal sex with the teacher and that the incidents took place at the school. Greenberg, posing as a student at the school, signed the letter, a very concerned student at the school. Greenberg's false accusations resulted in local law enforcement conducting a criminal investigation of the teacher. Florida Statute 800.101 criminalizes any authority figure, such as a teacher at school, from soliciting or engaging in sexual conduct, a relationship of a romantic nature, or lewd conduct with a student enrolled at a school. Violations of the statute are second-degree felonies. Greenberg's false allegations about the teacher involved false claims that the teacher had committed felony criminal offences. As Greenberg knew when he made those allegations in the letters and in the online posts, those allegations were false. Greenberg made those false allegations to cause substantial emotional distress to the teacher. After investigating the teacher, law enforcement found no support whatsoever for the false allegations that Greenberg has made. Well, Joel Greenberg and his lawyers are currently making the same allegations behind the scenes, and mostly, by the way, in leaks to the Daily Beast about Congressman Matt Gaetz. That, what you just heard, is a big old red flag, big old smoking gun. And have you heard CNN talking about that part of the plea deal? MSNBC, ABC, Politico, anyone? You haven't, of course, because they want you to think that Matt Gaetz is guilty. They want you to think that Matt Gaetz involved himself in a relationship of a romantic nature or engaged in sexual conduct or lewd conduct with a minor. The very same pattern that Joel Greenberg pleaded guilty to this past week. Amazing, isn't it? Amazing. Well, you know we like to say signal not noise, huh? We are also the national pulse. And we do not miss a beat. I want to say thank you to some of our new members who have joined us in the last day or so. Richard, Raymond, Frank, David, Stephen, Milda, Kay, Jen, Paul, Sarah, James, Carrie, Stephen, Doran, or Duran, Frank, Adrian, John, Alan, Abner, Stephen, Susan, Drew, Catherine, Douglas, Jack. The list goes on and on. And if you want to come and join the National Pulse Artist Collective and make your mark on the news, head on over to fundrealnews.com. There is also, for the more profligate amongst you, a new layer of membership, a new level of membership, I should say, called Super Backer. And Super Backers get the added bonus of coming on this podcast with me. We've already got 2 of them. So how about it? Fundrealnews.com. The link to Andrew Giuliani's website will be in the bio, or whatever it's called, the description for this podcast. And I need you to do me one massive favor, ladies and gentlemen. Like it, review it, share it, subscribe. 5 stars. Help us reach more people. I'll see you in Arizona.